tell us what you are today, what you do today. Who is this Robert Blackwell dude today?
Well, today I run two companies. One is called EKI Digital. It's a management and technology consulting company, and we're actually changing the name of the company to Quant 16, and it is going to be a digital asset investment advisory company. So I used to be a trader for a long time, and I'm just kind of a math guy, and nobody's really applied quantitative investment strategies to the digital area. So that's what we do. We've helped people identify billions of dollars of new revenue and efficiencies in their businesses and in government. So we're going to transition to being a digital investment advisory company. The other company is a company called Killerspin. And Killerspin, I say we exist to help people connect to the people that they love and that need their love through break time play. So we think about how we can connect family, friends, customers, and employees. I think there's two big trends in the world. There's the digitization of everything, and then there's the rebellion against the digitization of everything. So we think that people need people, and break time play connects people.
Awesome. And so when you look at these two companies, which one was started? When did they start? And what was the vision you had for these two organizations?
So maybe I can take a minute and I can just give you my pre-canned little boring speech on where I was born to where I got to today.
Awesome.
Love it. I was born in Philadelphia, but I grew up in Wichita, Kansas. My father's from Philadelphia. My mother's from Louisville, Kentucky. And they went to school at Wichita State. That's where they met. So I lived for, I'd say, most of my very young years in Wichita, Kansas. And I was lucky because my parents didn't have any money. They were educated people of really good character, but I say they were so broke they couldn't pay attention. My father was 23 and my mother was 20 when I was born, something I cannot imagine doing. But I got really lucky in life because I had really great parents. And essentially, they let me do whatever I wanted to do as long as I followed some basic rules. The basic rules were, number one, speak the English language. My parents were really sticklers about using proper grammar. Now, I'm a math guy. I never figured it out. So if I would say things like, oh, I've never been here before, my mother would say, before what? In a sentence with a preposition. I mean, it was like that. And what they expected was that we just do our best, not embarrass our family, and be honest people, and treat everybody well. Those were kind of the rules in my house.
Great rules.
So when I was young, I started school when I was 4 years old. I think I was a part of the first kindergarten class, which would have been in 1965.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, even though my parents really didn't have any money, I walked to school when I was 4 and 5 years old by myself. That's how people do today. And I remember when I was 5, I would walk around and there were these recycling Coke bottles. When people would drink Coke, you would have to recycle the bottles.
Yeah.
So they
refundable.
Deposit.
What is it? 5 cents?
I would just pick them up and I'd go turn them in for the money.
Yeah.
So that was my first little money-making thing when I was 5. And I really liked it. And so when I was 8, I noticed that when the kids would go out for lunch, there was a candy store that was not too far from our school. So people would go and buy candy. Now, the problem in those days, if you got back late, teachers could actually hit you, paddle you with these thick paddles with holes in them. So there was a pretty big disincentive for being late. I don't think those disincentives exist today.
No.
Uh, but I noticed that everybody they still wanted their candy. So I saved my money. I brought a little money from my father, and I went and bought bubble gum. They used to have these long sticks of gums called Bub's Daddy.
Yeah, yep.
And so I'd go buy them for a nickel, and I would sell them for a dime. So I was like 8 years old. Maybe I made $20 a day. So this is 1969. I can't imagine my father made a whole lot more money than that. Um, but I really just like being in control of my own destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, I'm a super introverted person, and I kind of a weird math brain. So I did that, and then in 1973 we moved to Chicago. My father, he got a job from IBM. He got transferred. We got transferred to Illinois, so he moved in Chicago. Now, when I grew up in an all-black neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
I, you know, I only saw white people on TV, other than some of the friends my father would work with. And even though this was the 60s, and while my father was, I'd say, very pro-black, he was not anti anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So he made sure that we never judged anybody by what ethnicity they were, and he never bought into white people are evil stuff, which was, to be honest with you, a lot of us were taught because things had happened. But my father never bought into that. So he would make sure that he went and he took us to meet people from all backgrounds, because in our neighborhood, we lived in an all-black neighborhood. My grandparents in Louisville and in Philadelphia lived in all-black neighborhoods. That's a time where there wasn't a lot of interaction
Sure.
between blacks and whites. And it was a very different time then. So we moved to Chicago.
Let me stop here. Isn't it crazy to think? If you look at Robert, he doesn't look his age, and when he's telling his age, doesn't look it at all. So it's hard to imagine, right? In his short life, that only when he was a kid that it was that different, right?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Amazing. A short period of time, how things have changed. But I mean, there's still goes on. But I mean, sorry about that. But go on.
No, it's no problem. So we moved to Chicago, and I remember my father was looking at where we were going to live. So my father comes to Chicago. Of course, we don't know anything about Chicago. All you read about, and frankly, back then it wasn't very different. It's dangerous, a bunch of gangs and things like that. So my father, and my mother found a place, I think, in Chicago that they were looking at getting, but the head of the school board at the time was a guy named Manfred Bird. And my father said, I want to get my kids into this school. I heard this is a good school, so I'd like to get my kids in this school. And Manfred Bird said, you don't get to decide where your children are going to go to school. I'm going to decide it. And my father said, no, you're not. So he moved us. He went to the suburbs. Now, and so we first lived in in Glen Ellen.
Mm-hmm.
For a little while, and then we lived in Lombard. So we were really the first, I'm pretty sure, black family in the western suburbs.
Huh.
I know in Glen Ellen, and then in Lombard later. So we were in a year, and we were in Glen Ellen. So I was in junior high, and so I was in junior high, and of course, I'm the only black person there. It wasn't very friendly. But I had been selling gum and making money in Wichita, and I suspected white people probably like gum as well.
So you moved the business too. You moved the business and everything with you.
Yeah. So I was 12 years old, and I'd never done well in school.
Oh.
I would just say I was I call myself a non-dangerous delinquent. So I brought that business to the school, and yeah, it turns out Everybody liked gum there as well. So I money. In fact, I was selling so much gum that people didn't have enough money to buy ice cream anymore. So I remember the vice principal. He tried to get me to stop selling gum. I said, "Is there some rule against this?" "No, but I don't want you to do it." And so he called my father, and my father said, "Is there a rule against it?" And he said, "No, but we're losing money." And he said,
Losing
"Not,
money.
not my problem."
You're competing against the principal
Right.
and it was maybe
Yes.
the PTO's money.
My father, it was great. He supported me. He said, "If he's not breaking any rules, don't call me." So they ended up having to do a deal where I sold my ice cream and I sold my gum and their ice cream.
There you go.
So,
Oh.
yeah, it was kind of an interesting year.
Now,
in
wait,
my-
wait, 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 wait. Were you getting a commission on that as a
Yeah.
reseller or what?
Modern day partnership.
Tell us about that.
So no, since he couldn't stop me from selling my gum, I made a deal with him to sell my gum and his ice cream.
Mhm.
So they did a deal with me, and I got a cut of the ice cream, and I got to sell my gum.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So also at the time, I remember because I was just a total screw up in school. In fact, my mother couldn't figure out what's wrong with me because I didn't appear to be totally stupid. So she had me tested. She went and took me to this place and had me tested.
Mhm.
And so they tested me in math, and I came up with a better answer than they had. So they told my parents, maybe your kid's not totally dumb, maybe he's not applying himself. So she told me that, I mean, maybe a couple of years later. I didn't even remember that. I didn't even know that. So I go to high school. My parents moved to Lombard,
Mhm.
and I get
So what high school was that?
that was Glenbard East.
Okay, yep.
So again, we're the first. No other black families anywhere around.
Mhm.
So we move in, and we have a bomb thrown in our house. And we go home on our lawn, and lucky my mother was in Kentucky with my siblings, and me and my father were here. So obviously that wasn't very fun.
Hmm. No way.
But my father said, "Suck it up. We're not going anywhere." That's what he said to me. And so we did. I got through it and went to Glenbard East. But the experience, I ended up getting in lots of fights all the time. It's fun. Most of the fights I got in were of my own making because I just hated to see like kids pick on kids with special needs.
Uh-huh.
I just had no tolerance for that.
Oh, yeah. Well, you were experiencing a little bit of your own, right? Not special needs, but just a different kid, different look, different whatever, right? Just like a special needs kid would experience this stuff. So you were using your own experience, and you're not letting it happen to other people.
It wasn't my own experience. I just thought it was wrong
Yeah, that's awesome.
to take advantage of people that were weaker than you.
Yeah.
To me, that's what cowards do,
Mm-hmm.
right? It doesn't take any courage to go fight somebody a lot smaller than you and has some special challenges. So it's something that I just really bothered me even at a really young age.
Awesome.
So I went to school and, I was still a goof off. I mean, it wasn't that I was goofing off. I was trying to make money.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't really paying attention in school. So I never really liked it. It's just a place to go and make money.
It was your market.
Yeah. So, I couldn't really relate to people. These were like foreign people to me. In fact, it was weird. All my friends ended up being foreigners, people from all kinds of places in the world. And I ended up kind of being friends with them because I couldn't be friends with the other people because kind of all this racial tension. Thought I had a friend and I'd say, could I, hey, my brother has to go to the bathroom. Can my brother use your bathroom? Because my brother's 9 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
So he was pretty small at the time. Said, no, my parents won't let black people in the house.
What?
So, yeah. So at that time, so this is 1974 probably. And so luckily for us, because my sister actually told my parents she couldn't take it anymore. And they had to send her back to Wichita, Kansas.
Wow.
So she went back to Kansas to go to school there and live with one of my aunt.
Your sister's older than you?
No, I'm the oldest of 5.
Okay. So she was a couple years behind you?
Yeah, she's 21 months younger than me.
Okay.
And it was just too much stress for her. She
Mhm.
couldn't take it.
Yeah.
So my parents sent her back there. So she went to school there. She came back a couple years later and then went to Glenbard South. So me going through this, it wasn't until I was 15 that I'd done 2 things. I was with a counselor at school because, everybody has to go to the counselors.
Yeah.
And the counselor said to me, I think you're a guy of average intelligence and ability. You should be a carpenter. That was the advice he gave me. So I went home and I told my father this. And my father said, what do you expect? You don't apply yourself? You're not doing your best? What do you think they're going to think of you? And that really hit me. And then when I'm like 16 and I get involved in Hapkido, which is a martial arts. Because before that I was in wrestling and then I was in judo. So I started to get these little bits of discipline, and my father was really picky about. And one of the things my father said 2 things to me, which I'll never forget. We said 3 things, so I'll never forget. The first is, don't piss off your mother. Cause me trouble.
Standard.
Okay. Number 2, he said, in life, the only thing you have is your name. You can always make more money back, but you can never get your name back.
Yep.
So you have to protect that. The other thing he said to me is, if I may not be the best in the world, but if I give 100%, I'll be in the top 5%. So those things kind of stuck with me. And the other thing is, when I moved here, I luckily grew up where my parents never taught us that there was anything wrong with being black. It didn't make you better than anybody, but it didn't make you worse than anybody else. So all the stuff that I think that we were forced to see, there used to be in the library these little black Sambo books, and you'd watch things on TV and it was about pimps, and it just represented black people really poorly.
Sure.
And my parents said, you're never going to act like that.
So they never allowed you to be the victim. They expected you to not have crutches, right? But consider everything as a blessing and a learning opportunity, and you establish grit that other people may not have ever established as victims, right?
Yeah, I would say that's right. It's like we live in a world where it's just harder for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fair, but it is what it is. However, that's not an excuse for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was actually luckier than my younger siblings, because they didn't really have to go through my one sister's 21 months younger Then I have a sister who's 7 years younger, 9 years younger, and then 11 years younger. The world's really changed a lot between 1974.
Was that 4 sisters?
No, I have one brother and 3 sisters.
1 brother and 3 sisters. Okay.
Yeah. So it's sister, sister, brother, sister.
But you had to grow up being the leader of this family, these little sisters and brother, right? So you had to grow up to lead naturally and be the
That's what
barrier breaker.
I didn't really do a great job at that in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
I was a loner. Kind of later in life, I felt like I could have done a much better job helping, being more of a family person than I was. Yeah, I don't look in retrospect. I don't think I did a very good job at that. I love my siblings, but I don't think I did a great job when I was young. I had my own drama to deal with. My parents, right, didn't push a lot of that on me. But in retrospect, I wish I would have done a better job. So anyway, so I'm 16 years old. I had been, my mother used to smoke. So I'd begged my mother for years, since I was 4 years old, stop smoking. And then when I was 16, I said, actually it was 15. I said, I'll make you a deal. If I get straight A's, will you stop smoking? And she said, yes.
Wow.
So 15, 16, I started 2 things. I started practicing Hapkido, and I got lucky enough to get its instructor. His name was Master Chang, and it changed the way I behaved. I got a lot more discipline. So the combination of that, which I found something that I was really good at, that I could excel at, that I was better, I think, than all the other people in the school. So I decided that I just made a decision I was going to get straight A's because I love my mother. And I did.
Awesome.
I went from, listen, I failed geometry, and I'm like such a math guy that it's almost like embarrassing. It's like Michael Jordan failing jumping. So I just changed my mind.
Did your mom quit smoking?
She quit smoking when I was in college. It took her about a year and a half because I wanted to get out of high school at 16. I could have. She didn't let me. She made me wait until my 17th birthday.
All right. That's some accelerated learning that happened in a short period of time that allowed you to do that. Right.
So once I decided I was going to do it, then I did it. And I went to summer school to make out some stuff that I'd screwed up. And then I just was determined to get out. And then I went to school in UIC and I studied math. So as I was recollecting this time in my life, I remember what my mother told me when I was 12. So I remember when I was 12, I was thinking about kind of systems and what would happen if you just kept dividing things. You just kept dividing and kept dividing and kept dividing. What patterns would come out of that? So at 12, I developed my own theory of fractals, which I never even realized what that was. In fact, fractals never came about until the mid-70s. There was an IBM engineer that came up with this whole theory of fractals. So on one hand, I've always been kind of just a math person. So I go to school. I study math because it's easy because I can't read. I think I've gotten through life and maybe I've read 2 books. I just would go to the back of the chapter.
So wait. So at this point in time or today, 2 books?
No, I listen to lots of
Okay,
books.
there you go. Okay, there you go.
My phone, I probably have 200 books that I've listened to,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe another 150 podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I spend a couple hours every day educating myself.
Awesome.
But I'm not very good at reading, like reading paper.
Yeah.
So when I was in college, I just listened and I noticed the pattern. They would just tell you what was going to be on the test.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
So just go read the summary. They're going to tell you what's on the test. Take the test. That's all that matters.
True.
That makes you, they don't care if you learn anything. They just want their money for their credits, and you want the grade.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I got done with that. Then I started working at IBM.
So what was your degree? Math degree or?
In math. I studied math and psychology.
Okay.
Studied math because it was easy, and psychology, I got to figure myself out.
Did it work?
The math is easy still.
Did you figure yourself out yet?
No.
No.
I know myself. Other people have trouble, but hey, what can I do about that?
Save that for your 60th birthday, huh?
So I went to work at IBM. So my father was a sales manager at IBM for a long time. My father is a great salesman, and he's a great human being. So when my father was at IBM, my father would be the person that was fighting for opportunities for blacks and for women. In fact, I remember at his retirement party, a lot of people came there to his retirement party, which was 1992. And they said, the guy came up and talked, who's one of the managers who reported to him. And they said, Bob had 9 sales managers, and 8 of them were women, and they were me. And when I left, he replaced it with another woman. The other thing is, my father said, women work and men talk.
Mm.
So it's kind of a practice that I say I followed. The other is that he was really kind of dedicated to giving everybody opportunity. People that it wasn't obvious that they were going to be stars, but he gave them opportunities and he pushed them. So I would say this is my father's legacy. My father has helped lots and lots of people.
Awesome.
Who might not have had other opportunities.
Is your dad still alive?
He is, yes.
All right.
So
does he live near you? You see him much?
he lives in Indiana.
Okay.
He lives in Beverly Shores, Indiana. Him, my parents do. Right now they're in Austin, Texas. They're with my brother, visiting my brother.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a job at IBM. And by the way, IBM had a no nepotism rule. And everybody in my family's worked at IBM. So the way the deal worked was the sales managers would just say, you hire my kids, I'll hire your kids.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, frankly, it's just economics. It's just incentives. And there are a lot of unintended consequences when governments or people put in these rules.
Sure.
To figure out a way to get around them.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm working at IBM, and I get assigned to the #1 copier salesperson in the country. And he said, I'm the #1 salesperson in the country. Your job is to make sure we don't lose any installs. And don't F it up, because I'm #1. No problem. So I ended up writing this algorithm. So I was actually one of the first people in Chicago they put in charge of the personal computer. And so I was a systems engineer. I was working on the personal computer, and they had something called VisiCalc. VisiCalc was their first spreadsheet.
Okay.
Which was followed by Lotus 1-2-3.
Mm. Wow.
So I was a person in charge of that. So I wrote my own macro programming language for those. And I wrote algorithms on how to discover sales opportunities that ended up getting rolled out throughout all IBM. So awesome. I think I was 21 at the time. And I remember the training in IBM. You go through training and they say to you, in a nice way, if you're not a salesman, you're a nobody.
Hmm.
They didn't say it exactly like that, but say the chairman's a salesman, president's a salesman, anybody who's anybody. This is a sales company.
Sure. Sales-driven organization, yeah.
Yeah. And I wasn't. I was just this little nerdy kid.
You said you're introverted, right?
Megally introverted.
Yeah, you would never know that today.
I could be, I'd say, half as introverted, and I would still be super introverted. I'm extremely introverted, except when it comes to business, because in business, if you don't talk to people, you don't eat.
Absolutely.
So therefore, in business, I've learned to talk to people. But when I was in IBM, I remember this lady who knew my father. She called my father and said, I think your kid, I think he's smart, but we can't get him to talk. It's kind of a pattern in my life. Maybe there's something there. So she tells my father, we can't get the kid to talk. So I decide this is not a place for me. So I leave. So I'm 21, 22, I leave. And I start my own computer consulting company. Remember, it was called YDR Computer Services. It was me and two friends of mine from Venezuela. My best friend was a guy named Yun Goicoechea, a guy named Diego Ferrer, still a really good friend of mine. Like a lot of young people that age, I knew a lot more about technology than business.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of did well enough to feed myself. Fed myself and a couple other people. And I remember I was in my friend's house and I was talking to her mother. And I was 21, and I kind of jokingly said, by 22, I'm going to buy myself a Porsche. And she says, you're not buying yourself a Porsche. And I said, of course, because since she told me that, I said I'm going to. And I did, because I'd always save my money. And I said, this was one of the great lessons I learned in my life. Because I'm 22, I have this Porsche, and I'm just imagining how great my life's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
All the girls are going to like me. I'm going to drive up to the Academy Awards, kinds of silly stuff. But it turned out to be the most miserable time of my life. And I learned from that is that it is not the stuff that can make you happy. It's achievement that makes you happy. It's what you can achieve helping other people and being a leader in something, right? Reaching your potential and helping other people.
Absolutely.
It's what you achieve that makes you somebody, not the stuff you have.
Mm-hmm.
So since then, as soon as I like something too much, I get rid of it.